Olivier Guita is a security consultant and head of security and political risk firm Global Strat. He told me that the British tourists who went out to Tunisia hadn't been given the whole security picture.
Most of them had asked specifically the tour operator if Tunisia was safe, and as I understand it from the proceedings, they were told that Tunisia was 100% safe. And as we know today, there's not a single country in the world that is 100% safe. So that's one aspect that should have been underlined. The second thing is, among experts, we looked and we knew that Islamic State, just a few weeks before the attack, had specifically called for targeting tourists in Tunisia. So that's the second point. The third point is that it should have been really a big warning that other countries in Europe had, one way or another, sent the message to their citizens not to travel there any longer. So those are points that should have been made clear.
Yeah, wasn't there a British Foreign Office advice on travelling to Tunisia?
There was one that was focused mostly on being red and dangerous in other areas, as there's one in the Mount Chambi at the border with Algeria where there were a lot of jihadists fighting the Tunisian security forces, and it's still happening today. But Sousse was, if you will, green. So in a way as well, the Foreign Office travel advisory didn't change after the Bardo Museum attack. And I reckon it should have been changed at that point.
The sensational point from the coroner's inquiry was, of course, that the authorities took 3/4 of an hour to react. That they took so long to actually get it together. In reviewing this, why do you think that was?
A couple of things that are telling about the issue and the response is that there was a counterterrorism unit, if you will, that was close by and that didn't go directly to try to secure the site and go after the terrorists. They wanted to go back to their offices to get more ammunition and weapons, whereby it was only one terrorist, and it's assumed that with the firepower they had, they could have come directly. That's one thing. And one of the things that is really telling is that the authorities really were warned by the owner of the hotel that happens to be an MP and that called directly the Ministry of Interior to have him send troops and police to the hotel as soon as possible. So, yes, 40 minutes is unacceptable, and most probably, as we reckon, there were issues of fear and cowardness, but as well, and that is really important to note, is that the security services have been totally in shambles in Tunisia after the demise of Ben Ali in 2011, because most of the people that were competent were fired because they were associated with the ex-regime, and then people that were put in place were people that were close to the Islamist government that took over and that were much more lenient with jihadists, especially at the beginning of the term. So it's a matter of organization, authority, and disorganization as well.
Yeah, so the president goes, there's a void, and somehow the whole security apparatus falls down. You would have thought, wouldn't you, that the Foreign Office would have been able to figure that one out?
Yes, they should have, especially that we looked into also the number of terror attacks from the demise of Ben Ali in 2011 to 2015, and there were 64 terror attacks. And most of them occurred in 2014 and 2015. So we saw, and that was when what we would call the modus vivendi that was taking place between the Islamists and the jihadists really broke when the major jihadist group was declared a terror group under pressure by the outside community. And that's really when things started to go south and the number of attacks started to soar. If you see a country where there are, at least 1 or 2 terror attacks a month, then something needs to be done, especially if you're going to send your your citizens there to vacation.
Do you think that the situation's changed any? Is it any better, or is Tunisia a place that all right-thinking people should avoid for their holidays?
I'll be frank with you. I'll say that Tunisia is 10 times worse than what it was in 2015 when the attack in Sousse happened, because of a couple of points. They have now to face close to 5,000 jihadists that are in Syria, Iraq, and Libya, and that may return to the country, very motivated to attack the homeland, very motivated to attack Westerners, and very motivated to get Tunisia under the caliphate. And that's one point that we didn't have that in 2015 in those terms of numbers. But because of the defeats that Islamic State is facing in Libya, Syria, and Iraq, we're all looking at the returnees, if you will, coming back to roost in Tunisia. That's one. And the second huge stat is that the security services have stopped 15,000 people that were in the past, year and a half or 2 years that wanted to join Islamic State in those countries. So you have there a huge number of potential terrorists that could go after Western targets.